the name of this talk is Defeat Fear and Feel Freedom. It is actually the name of the series. I'm not quite sure how many weeks it's going to be. We're going to go with the flow a little bit. I've got an awful lot that I want to cover. The song was Brave by Sarah Bareilles. We're going to be talking about studying fear and anxiety. So anxiety will be in there as well. What causes it, how to overcome it, the metaphysical perspectives, teaching from major religions and spiritual programs about fear. We'll be talking about the medical and physical effects of fear and anxiety on the body long term. So how, if you have that feeling over and over and over again, how it affects your body. We'll be talking specifically about fears relating to aging, because some of us are in that place. We'll be talking about fear of the unknown, fear of rejection, fear of failure. We will be talking at the end about lessons from the dying, because lessons from the dying is all about the fact that they didn't take risks. If you read any of the books about fears that people talk about when they died, it's because they didn't take risks. So we're going to close the series out with looking at the lessons from the dying and what really matters to them. We're going to talk about how fear keeps you from living your best self, about expressing yourself fully, how to become brave. I'm going to have 11 ways to overcome fear and anxiety from Jay Shetty. So I'm pulling from him. You've heard me talk about him before. We're going to be talking about moving into fearlessness, scripture. We will always have scriptural references, and our scriptural references today will be about courage. So what it is and what it feels like in the body. So fear is one of the strongest emotions to affect humans. It is a natural emotion. It is a survival mechanism that alerts us of the presence of danger or perceived threat. It is a sensation or perception that tells us that something is different. We begin sweating profusely, trembling, we have weak muscles, increased heart rate, dry mouth, feeling powerless or hopeless, having dizziness, having high levels of adrenaline. Our body senses emergency. The blood flows quickly to our muscles. It increases the blood sugar. It is the mental ability to immediately focus on what the body perceives as a threat. Anxiety is a form of fear that has to do with thought. So it's not the same physical sensation as much as it is thought, or a threat of something that's going to happen in the future rather than in the present moment. Anxiety can take over your life, affecting your ability to concentrate on things, to eat, to sleep, to move around, to travel, to enjoy all the things that you enjoy about life, eventually affecting your health and leading to emotional, mental, or physical crisis or trauma. So fear is an unpleasant emotion that is triggered by the perception of danger, which could be real or imagined. Your mind will work tirelessly to turn your perceptions into reality. Fear has crippled us, stopped us from moving on, to develop into the people we were meant to be, the fear of failure, of rejection, and of the unknown. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, "Do what you fear, for when you do it, the death of fear is certain. Face your fears, for when you conquer your fears, they no longer hold you hostage." Franklin D. Roosevelt said, "The only thing we should fear is fear itself." And JFK said, "Only those who dare to fail greatly can achieve greatness." So we're going to be talking about all of that. So we're going to start off with How to Be Brave by Dr. Margie Morrell. She is an author and a speaker. She wrote the books Find Your Courage, Make Your Mark, Stop Playing Safe, The Brave, You've Got This, and The World Needs Your Courage, Not Your Perfection, which I just love. She says, "Are you afraid of saying what's on your mind, taking a risk, holding back from making a change? Are you afraid of what might happen if you did make the change? We have to be careful to celebrate out the fears that are serving us and those that are holding us back and feeling self-doubt. Our inner critic never goes away. The fear drives us to focus more on what we could lose than on what we could gain. There have been MRI studies of the brain that show you that this is true. More on what could go wrong than what could go right. We overestimate the risks and we underestimate ourselves. Most of us settle for less than life than we are capable of living. Action is the most powerful antidote to fear. Every time you act in the presence of fear, you dilute its power. All the courage you admire in others lives in you. She grew up on a farm in the Aussie bush. She was a horsewoman from a very, very early age. She started riding horses. She asked for this horse. Her dad didn't have any money, so they did an auction. They all pulled straws, and they actually won this horse, but the horse was a wild horse in Aussie, and so she kept getting thrown off it. But she was very, very grateful to have the horse, and she kept getting back on. And she said the more she did it, the more her confidence grew and the more her fear waned. And within a year, she was winning races. The lesson is courage and comfort can't ride the same horse. Fear is wired into our psychological DNA to keep us safe and protect us from pain. We tend to overestimate the risks and underestimate ourselves and catastrophize the outcomes. We rationalize the status quo. Most importantly, we discount the cost of inaction. She says our biggest problem is that we do nothing. Courage is what it takes to bridge the gap between who you are and who you could be. Aristotle said courage is the first of all virtues because it makes all others possible. There is no shortcut, but skill can be learned and mastered with practice. Every time you take action against fear, you reclaim the power your fears have had over you. You develop new neural pathways in your brain. You get affect tolerance, which means you are more comfortable with being uncomfortable. She was the first to go to university. After graduating, she did a year-long trip around the world to explore the world. She was taught during this trip that everyone from all countries struggles with an internal tug of war. The short-term desire for comfort, certainty, control, and looking good, and their deepest desire for learning and growing and doing good. Digital devices pummel us 24/7 with reasons to be afraid. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "We tiptoe gently through life only to make it safely to death." The end of life, the biggest regrets are not the choices that people took, but the chances that people didn't take. They settled too fast for far too little. The long arc of our lives fails too much from timidity than from ever doing what we are daring to do. Research shows that humans flourish most when working hard toward meaningful goals, a sense of purpose and challenges. They put us at risk of feeling rejection, disappointment, and hurt. Helen Keller said, "Life is a daring adventure or nothing at all." So she decided when she was married in her early 20s to go to Papua New Guinea. She and her husband decided that they were going to go somewhere they had never been before. And they picked places, they applied for jobs, and they got one, and he got one in Papua New Guinea, and they decided to go. So this was going to be a new adventure. She was 18 weeks pregnant. She was at work one day by herself. 3 men with sawn-off shotguns came into the office and said, "Open the safe." And she said, "I don't know how." And they said again, "Open the safe." And she said, "I don't know how." They threw her on the ground. One guy stood on top of her. She lay face down on the ground, and one man felt his hands up her skirt between her thighs. She was terrified of being taken back to the village and gang raped, which is something that was very, very common. The men finally found the cash and they left. A few weeks later, actually 10 days later, she went to the doctor and she had lost the baby. So she had these 2 traumatic experiences, the men with the guns and losing the baby. She said, "This rocked my world. I journaled daily. One day I came to the decision, I will not be defined by this experience. I will not let my fear shrink my future." It was a life-defining moment. It nurtured resilience and courage and the capacity for dealing with challenges, every challenge that has come ever since. Heartache, she says, is part of the human condition. You feel like the rug has been pulled out from underneath us, as when we are all playing it safe, we actually shrink our ability to deal with challenges. Ask yourself, what do I need to be afraid of if I don't take the risk? What would be the outcome of playing it safe? She went to circus school one day because she's a risk taker. She climbed up, overcome by fear. The fear was screaming at her. She said it lives in her tissue, was racing heart, shaking hands, shaking knees, dry throat. But all of her friends, she had already written these books, started yelling up the name of these books to her. And she realized she'd written all these books about conquering fear, and she couldn't just get down the ladder. She had to actually do it. So she actually did do it. And she said the only way to conquer fear is to first dare and then believe that you can do it, but dare first. We can redefine our future that is not defined by our past. Ask yourself, where do you need to be braver in this one precious life? Choose courage over comfort. So again, at the end of this series, we'll be talking about lessons from the dying, all about what they didn't do. So scripture, our scriptural focus today is on courage. Isaiah 41:10, fear not, for I am with you, for I am your God. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Ephesians 6:10, finally be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. 1 Corinthians 16:13, be on your guard, stand firm in the faith, be courageous, be strong, do everything in love. Psalm 31:24, be strong and let your heart take courage, all you who would wait for the Lord. Joshua 1:9, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous, do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. 2 Timothy 1:7, for God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and of self-control. Psalm 56:3, when I am afraid, I put my trust in you. In God, whose word I praise, in God I trust, I shall not be afraid. All right, Jay Shetty. You've heard me talk about Jay Shetty. He is an incredibly successful podcaster. He is also an author. He was a monk, a Hindu monk in India for a while. You probably all know him. He's got millions and millions of views. He wrote the book, Think Like a Monk, Train Your Mind for Peace and Purpose Every Day, and also 8 Rules of Love, How to Find It, Keep It, and Let It Go. And so he gives 11 tips on how to deal with your anxiety. For most people, when you experience pain, you equate that with anxiety, he says, but pain plus reflection equals progress. I thought that was a great quote. So number 1, the Buddhist raft journey. So the Buddhists, this is a Buddhist story that they tell about this guy who was going down the river and the rapids were coming at him and he couldn't cross the river and he threw a log in. He was going to jump on the log, but the log got swept away and he realized he needed to build this really strong raft. So he built this really strong raft and he was able to get across the river. And he said, this raft saved my life. So I need to carry this raft with me forever. And then you realize he could either struggle through with the raft on his back, trying to go through the forest and all the rest of his life carrying this huge big raft on his back, or he could put it down. So often what's causing us anxiety is what we're holding on to, he says. Our view of what is normal, what we accept, the picture we're projecting that we're holding on to something that no longer serves you, if that causes you more anxiety. He says, ask yourself, what do you need to let go of? Number 2, Wayne Dyer. You all know how much I love Wayne Dyer. Change your thoughts, change your life. 60 to 80,000 thoughts per day cycling through your brain, and most of them are negative. Wayne Dyer says when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. It allows us to distance from our thoughts and what he calls upgrade them to healthier thoughts. Number 3, think like a monk. The Yale research says one of the most difficult jobs is hospital cleaners. You can imagine having to clean out all that stuff from the hospital. They interviewed hundreds and hundreds of them. Some of them described themselves as cleaners. Others described themselves as healers, servers, caregivers, transformers. It was the same exact work, but they saw themselves as directly connected to the healing journey of the patients, a way of serving. This is called job crafting. You look at your work differently. You think about the impact your work has on others. So he talks about when you're got your head stuck in the spreadsheet or you got yourself looking at the computer and you're doing the same thing over and over and you're working really hard, pull back and look at the big picture. How are you serving other people, but also how are you serving yourself? You're putting food on your table. You've got a roof overhead. Focus on what work allows you and the people you love to do. That reduces the anxiety of your day-to-day tasks. Number 4, look at something that has natural elements. So obviously water, plants, anything that is living, a fish tank, anything that is inspiring and calming and relaxed. He has artwork of inspirational people. He says he's had, and he showed pictures of faces of people that he really admires up on his wall. And he says, I remind myself that I can overcome just as they did. Number 5 is time. So T is gratitude, thankfulness, not worried or anxious, express it. So he's talking about express it to a human being, not just when you're journaling, when you write your list of all your thankfulness, which I talk about all the time, but that when you're thankful for a human being in your life, you actually say that to that human being. Express it, be specific, be recent and current, something they did currently for you, personalize it. That creates a bond between you and the person you are thanking. It boosts your mood, it boosts your immune system, and it improves your relationship. I is number 6, inspiration. Feeling motivated, use that emotion to help navigate anxious emotion. So when you're feeling anxious, turn your attention to something that's going to motivate you, like reading, listening to audiobooks. There are incredible speakers out there and inspirational quotes. M is for meditation. Schedule time with yourself in your daily calendar. Calm, stillness, presence. Sit with yourself and check in. How am I doing today? How do I feel? What do I need to do to feel better? E is for exercise. He talks about competitive exercising, that you get rewards out of that if you can exercise with other people, or collaborative exercising, that it's more beneficial if you can exercise with others. And then number 9 is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The mind is either rushing to the past or projecting to the future. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste, will bring you back to the present, and it helps you to not focus on your anxiety. Number 10, he's big into smell, diffusers or candles. He says, as soon as you smell this scent, it has been proven by brain waves that you will change your state of your anxiety by changing the smell in the room. So he's very strong on changing the smell. And number 11 is silence. Sometimes. So sometimes you want to be in silence, he says, but there's also very carefully chosen music that can help you calm down. So those are 11 ways that you can help yourself when you're feeling over anxious. So we're going to move into fearlessness. This is a talk that was given by a Unity minister at Rehoboth Beach named Reverend Carol Bursello. And she says, when we are in pain or fear, we assume the worst of God. We resist the divine timing of grace and limit ourselves and the power of love in our lives. We live in fear. When we do that, we live outside trust. We choose to give into the dark place. We think it is safer there. We seem invisible there, but we push out the light in the world and we forget the kindness of strangers. You may have grown up with lots of fear, parents, siblings, bullies, fears at school of not measuring up, physical fear, mental fear, emotional fear. Tell yourself, I release the past with ease and I trust the process of life. Louise Hay says, fear happens inside when you don't trust life. We don't have trust that we're being cared for or taken care of on a higher level. We try to control events in our lives. The other side of control is fear of failure. We can make a decision not to experience fear about our choices. Trust is what we learn when we overcome our fears. How many times did you trust and take that leap of faith? You connect to the universal intelligence. There is a really fine balance the body maintains in its chemistry, its cellular structures, its organ systems. All of these work without you knowing exactly how it works. I was able to get over my biggest fear, she said. My biggest fear was remaining in the life that I had created. I didn't want to live at the level of emotional survival. I wanted to experience moments of ineffable beauty, fulfilling joy, peer relationships, and returned love. Fear had become the imposing curtain hiding the wizard. I trembled at what might be behind it. That curtain was my ego. It wasn't until my soul, my trusty little Toto soul, caught the edge of it on the run and whipped it away from the great illusion that I was able to unveil my life, to let go of what I really didn't even own. It wasn't until that moment that the reality of my half-empty existence smacked me upside my head and woke me up. I just love that. We always have the opportunity to return to love, return to God as the source of all love. Jesus called God Father. In the Aramaic, that word has 43 different meanings. Father and mother both mean beloved. Turn our fear over to the one who loves us unequivocally, no matter what we do. Every time we do fear, we lose light. And our only purpose for being here is to bring light into being. Metaphysically, fear is used to denote reverence or respect for the law of God. Its meaning is pay attention. Every angel who ever showed wings started the conversation with, fear not. The word human has two parts. Hu is the ancient word for God. It is the word anywhere people use to address the originator of life. To be human, then, is to be God in man. Not only does God have our back, God leads us every step of the way. Take every step forward into new strength. Let every forward move be a move into fearlessness. So here's what I know. Throughout this series, I will be sharing times where fear had a huge, big negative impact on my life. You know, I tend to have some personal stories in here. I want to give you a whole lot of tools. Every single week, I will give you tools on how to manage fear and anxiety, but I will also have some personal stuff in there. So in my early 40s, I'm going to say 25, 26 years ago, I took a trip to Santa Fe. I had been really, really, really looking forward to it. I had saved up all year. I went with my partner at that time. My partner was not working, so I was the sole financial provider, and my partner did not drive, so I had to do all the driving. We flew there. The fear of the unknown was almost crippling for me. I had limited funds, so I had put aside money, but we couldn't just spend it all. You know, we had to be careful about it, and he tended to spend much more than I did. And the stream of thoughts of all that could go wrong strongly influenced my ability to enjoy the trip. By the time I arrived, I got off the plane, I had a migraine that was so bad that I spent the whole night and the next day throwing up. And it was painful because I knew that everything I wanted was outside that door. And he kept saying, can't you just stop? But I was so overwhelmed with fear and anxiety. It drove me. Now, again, this is 25 years ago. I was a different person then. But it was horrible. The pain was excruciating, and I was aware that everything I wanted was outside the room. Fear gripped me throughout this trip. We went to these ruins. I don't remember the name of them, but they're outside Santa Fe, of this village of people that don't exist anymore. But you had to drive on this long desert road, and we had a rental car, and I was really, really afraid that it would either overheat or I would run out of gas. And so it was another example of me missing the experience of this beautiful place because I was so terrified that I would get lost, or that the car would break down, or that I wouldn't have enough gas. And as I look back on it now, I can see really clearly that anxiety ran my life, 100% ran my life. It was impossible for me to enjoy myself. There was the possibility of running out of gas because we were far, far away, but it was not the actual fact. I was worried about money everywhere we went. I worried about not having enough time to do everything that we wanted to do. I tried to control all of the details of every single moment of this trip. I was worried about the flight home. I was worried about returning the car. I was worried about the cats at home. From the moment I left to the moment I returned home, I was in a constant state of anxiety. Looking back, I'm not sure if I actually enjoyed any of it. I could not relax. I could not let go. I could not stop trying to control all the details. It was a lack of control that was overwhelming, and the fear of getting lost. I went to beautiful museums and art galleries, and I walked around the incredibly special town that was so filled with fear and anxiety, I couldn't take most of it in. Now, again, it was 25 years ago. I've learned a lot since then, but here was this perfect, incredible journey, which could have been filled with so much joy, that was ruined by my inability to trust. When I was in it, I could not see that my anxiety was all based on internal thoughts and not what was actually happening on the outside. When you're deep in the place of fear, you can't see a way out. I'm a changed person now, and I know I have the ability to look at my thoughts and see when I'm digging a hole for myself, which is not real. But it has taken years and a lot of work and a lot of prayer and writing and a lot of therapy and a lot of time spent with God. I know now God is always in charge of all of the details, and God always wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. And the only way we will ever change and grow is to take risks. We will explore fear and anxiety and all the forms it takes, and we will come to the understanding that once again, it all comes down to faith and trusting in the one thing that we cannot see, the love of an infinite God who loves and cherishes us. So together, we will study how to defeat fear and feel freedom. And so it is. Remember, at all times, the power is in you. It always has been, and it always will be.